All right, hello. We're gonna make a soft slab cup using templates and texture. Just some overview of the requirements. You are going to make it using a template, which in this case looks like this. You're going to use texture tools to create some texture, and I'll show you some options for that. And you're gonna be using exclusively glaze on your piece. So this is an example of what you might be making. Handles are optional. The color you use is up to you. You might end up using your test tiles to decide what color, but you will need to choose what clay body you want to use. So don't forget to check the test tile examples. And remember, those only show individual glazes, not glaze combinations. You can see this is an example of where the brown and the blue glaze are starting to run together and the blue and the white. But remember, you're going to want to do your own tests. But think about overall what you want your clay and glaze interaction to look like. This is the speckled clay body. I'm going to be doing a demo with the redware clay body. Your choice. So that's one of the first choices that you need to make today. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to get your clay. If it is a fresh block, you can just cut off about a 1.5 inches or so. If it's not, then you need, I don't know, about this amount, and you need to wedge it. And then we're going to make slabs. So remember, we've made small slabs. Now we're going to make really big ones. And so for this, you could use your hand. I definitely want to move my slab around as I'm doing this, because you can see the table's already getting saturated with water. And remember, if I only do it right here and I never pick it up and move my slab, it's definitely going to stick to the table. And so when I have a nice, beautiful slab, I go to pick it up, it's going to tear because it's stuck to the table. So please pick up your slab occasionally, move it to slightly different areas as you are flattening and making it. To want to check this proportion of your template to your slab, keep in mind you need to make something that your template can cover and have a little extra. So as you're stretching it, you're probably going to want something a little longer than it is wide. Remember, you probably need some slab guides and your rolling pin. I find that just stretching it a little bit helps speed up the process. So I can see I probably need to get a little more. Well, I pretty much am there, but I just want to be mindful of where I'm letting my clay stretch out and where I'm not. Now I did use recycled clay, so it was wedged, and I can see I do have an air bubble or two here. So the best way to address this is to use a large scraper, which is kind of hanging on the wall next to the clay tools. And I'm going to, at an angle, run this along my clay, and that's actually going to help me see where my air bubbles are. And so I can use a needle tool and kind of pop those, get rid of them. If you were making something in the future where you wanted a lot of really fine detail or decoration, this scraper is great to really making a nice smooth surface as well. So just for future reference. Like everything, we're going to clean this when you're done. So pick up one more time to make sure it's not stuck before I start getting ready to shape. So I'm going to take my template and lay it out. And I'm just going to trace it right now, because my next step is actually to add some texture. I want to add texture before I shape this, because it's much easier to add it on a flat surface than it is on a vertical surface. We have a lot of texture options. We have texture rollers. Some of them are 3D printed, some are fired clay. We have texture stamps of all sizes. We have a few kind of foam or silicone ones as well for various things. So you might want to kind of use some of your excess clay to practice, right? Like, what does this stamp actually look like in clay, right? And so then it's a little easier to kind of make your choices off of your piece. Now, if you were stamping on here and you decide you didn't like it, this tool comes in really well to smooth that away. So I'm just going to kind of freehand it. I'm going to use this roller. Remember, there's no exact requirement for texture except that you're using some texture. And the reason why is I want you to think about, start to think about design and think, well, what is it going to look like with color, with glaze? How does the glaze sit inside of my texture, right? So I'm just going to play around and get some texture going on here. You can plan it out, or you can kind of freehand it like I'm doing. That's a preference thing. you know, I think I'm probably good with this. I don't think I'm going to use these, but if you were to use one of these, I'll show you on the side here. This is kind of great for top edges. I would take what's called, adorably called a pony roller, little tiny rolling pin, and I would use it just along the edge of this foam guy. And it might be hard to see, but it creates this really nice kind of scalloped edge, right? In the future, I do have extra sheets of this if you want to kind of make your own custom one. So now that I have my texture, I'm going to cut this out all the way, and I don't trust myself to freehand it, so I'm going to put my template back on to make sure that I'm not cutting into my texture. If you rolled things out with that foam, you might end up finding, oh, I stretched my piece a little bit. And so you would need to cut it out again anyways. Now I'm not going to get rid of this because I have two choices. One, maybe I need to use this for my test tiles, right? In which case, great, I've already made my slab. Two, I do need a bottom for this, and there are two little templates for that. They're really just a tiny circle, so I tend to just eyeball it, but you can also use the templates as well. So we're building with a technique called soft. Well, it's soft slab building because the slabs are really soft. They're really flexible, which is great because I can really curve and shape them without them cracking significantly. There are other ways of building with slabs that take advantage of it drying. In this case, we want it to be really flexible. The next thing to do is to potentially bevel the edges. And so a bevel is an angled cut. And you can do it with a specialty tool called a bevel tool, or with your needle tool or a knife. And the main thing is, this one does it for you because it has these wires already at an angle. You're going to bevel the joint. So if I were to show you, this goes together eventually like so. But if I join just together like this isn't a really strong attachment. If I join two pieces together without beveling them, you get a really thick attachment, right? Which is just not as attractive looking, and it adds a lot of excess weight to something when it doesn't have to. So the bevel removes some of that extra clay that you don't really need. So I'm gonna bevel it in a few spots. So the joints, I need to bevel it on opposite sides. So I've turned this one over, so my texture's on the bottom, and I'm gonna bevel this side. And I chose to use this 45-degree bevel. Either one is fine, and you can hold it this way or this way. And while I'm here, I'm actually gonna bevel the top inside rim. So if you look at this, you can see how this has a slightly beveled edge. And that's nice just because imagine you're taking a drink. If it's a really fat edge of clay, it might not be as comfortable just to do versus something that's a little beveled for your mouth. So I'm going to take this bevel tool and bevel around the top rim. I'm not going to bevel the bottom. Every time you pick up your slab, be gentle with it. You don't want to just hold it and flap it around like this because that does start to stretch and stress it. So you always want to support it. It's, you know, sensitive little guy here. And then I'm going to bevel this opposite side. So you can see that this side here is beveled, which means the opposite side over here should be beveled. All right. And then I'm going to get ready to attach it. I still don't have my base. I will just smooth this guy and use it for my base. And I know I'm going to need to score some of these, so I'm just going to do it right now. It's easier for me to do so here. I'm going to score the bottom here and my beveled edges. And as I pick it up, you know, I still want to be careful. I'm not really distorting the edges. So soft slabs are great because they're flexible. They're not so great because they're flexible, right? So you do have to have some care with it. I could add some slip, right? Or I could add water and score again. Remember, those are both great options for creating slip. So now I'm just going to kind of score this whole thing. I know I'm going to smooth it later, so I'm not particularly concerned about seeing my score marks somewhere right now. Then I'm going to start to assemble this. So I like to assemble it upright. If you do so having it laying down, you'll see the clay likes to flatten, and then you're going to end up with something flat, and it's harder to even out. But if I have it standing upright just on the table, the surface tension of it sitting on the table actually helps keep it fairly rounded. So right now what I'm doing is I'm kind of adjoining the two beveled edges, right? Kind of getting them to line up. I, again, am going to be really careful. I don't actually want to have this laying flat, but just so you can see what I'm doing. And I'm just gently pressing. I'm not smoothing this today. I actually am going to let this get a little stiff and dry before I smooth it. I'm going to put this on my base and make sure that I have it round, or say you wanted a square or triangular base, maybe I would adjust that at this point. I'm going to push down a little so that I make sure it's really attached, and then I would take my needle tool and cut around the base. What I'm doing is I'm just taking my needle tool and cutting around, tracing around what I have here. And then carefully, I might turn it over. Now I'm not going to hold it like this because you can see this edge is really thin, so I don't want to distort that. This is narrow enough that it's pretty strong if I hold it just right here without squishing it. And I just want to gently press down on the edge to make sure that these two are joined. This is all we're going to do today. So after this, then we'll talk about next steps, but you need to let it dry a little. Any additional work in terms of smoothing or anything, if we do it at this stage, you risk distorting this really significantly. So what you're going to do when you finish this, for today, I would say wrap it up in a bag. Sometimes when I want to keep something really damp, I'll kind of shove the plastic inside if it's a cup or a bowl so that there's not as much air touching my piece. In this case, I want to not do that. I want to really leave it full of air so that when we come back in a few days, it'll be a little bit stiffer and ready for us to do some more finishing touches. You'd want to make sure that your bag stays closed, so I usually will tuck it once or twice underneath the bottom of my piece so the weight of it holds it closed. And then I'm going to put this in my cubby, kind of tucked in the back out of the way, making sure that it's closed and ready for it to just hang out for the weekend. Just a quick reminder, when you're done, you probably have a lot of tools. You probably shared them with everybody, but don't forget that it's everybody's responsibility to clean up. So quick tip is just grab a sponge, make sure it's cleanish and damp, not so wet that I can squeeze out puddles of water, and just bring it back to your table and give everything a wipe down. Even your template. Because remember, clay dust, cumulatively is really bad for the lungs. Do me a favor and help me breathe by cleaning things up. And also, we are using a lot of different clay bodies, so please do everyone, including yourself, a favor so that we don't cross-contaminate clay when that's not our intention. I don't know about you, but I think most people don't like picking something up, thinking it's clean, using it, and then finding out that all of a sudden, oh no, my speckled clay body has some red clay in it, or my white clay body has some speckled in it, or whatever it might be. So I know it's a little tedious, but it's a really essential part of being a ceramic artist, being a human being. So please clean up. All right?